Hello everybody. In this video we're going to continue working on our login application, and what we're going to be using now will be only the adding the Google authentication. So this is going to be hopefully a short video, and adding the Google authentication is actually really easy to implement. Before we actually start, you can see that we have the application running in my local development. It is exactly the same that we deployed on the last video. So in order to enable the Google out, we need to get back to Firebase console and open the authentication. And on the sign-in method, we need to add a new provider. And we're going to add the Google provider. We enable it. We keep the project facing name. We can actually call view 3 login test or whatever name you want to put it. And you need to select your email that you have with the console. We save it. And with that, when we saw that it's already enabled, that means that it's up and running. So in order to use it, let's get back to the user area. We have the list of the user, and we see that provided is the email and password. Let's click on Get Started. On the left, let's open the authentication for web, and let's go to the Google sign-in. So we have pretty much almost everything already done. It says that the first thing we need to get a provider, and that will came from the Google provider from Firebase out. The second step is optional. We're not going to use it. The third step the same. Fourth the same. And fifth, we just need we need to get the sign in with pop-up from Firebase out, and then we call it, and we have a result. And this result is pretty much we have their user in there. And if the user is there, we can actually proceed. So in reality, it looks really simple. Of course, we need to send the authorization method that is going to be our Firebase out, and our provider that is going to be your Google authorization provider. Other than that, at the bottom, we can actually see sign out is pretty much the same. So let's actually get started. Let me open my app. Let me actually put this on the right. On the right, let's open the page on the left. And let's start with the simple stuff. So let me do a logout. And I want to add a button here for Google. So we look for Google SVG logo. We have something here for the Wikimedia. We click it. We can use this one probably. I will take this URL. You can actually save it in your component code, but I'm being lazy here. I just take this URL and I will go to open my login. And after the form, probably I need to do another button where I call this image. There you go. But before we proceed, let's change the order. So we have the button at the same place as the form. Can we put it like inside? Yeah, probably better. Let's put it inside the form. And make this bottom class with full. Actually, before we do that, let's actually do the background. Background white. We can see there is working. Let's do this to be a flex, and justify center. So we have the image. Let's add the padding y of 2, same with the other ones over there. And let's make it rounded. How rounder LG. There you go. We have our Google button now. Let's just make a little bit at the hover, background, cool gray. Mm, cool gray. Let me check if I found it. Mm. Oh, let's do a gray. 400. Oh, it's too much. 200. 300. There you go. We have that little just to hide there. Probably it should be more than enough. And this will call all authentication. So we have the layout done. That was really easy. So what is telling us here is we just need to get, and let me see if I can actually make this a little bit bigger. Perfect. And then a little bit smaller. And we need to go to step number 1. We need to create a provider. So let's actually let's go to, well, we can do it through here. No, let's go to use out. Okay, let's get the Google provider. And let's call it. Let's put it inside the use authentication. And let's export the provider. Yeah, I believe let's actually call this Google provider. Okay, we are not going to add any scope, and the only things that we need is signing with pop-up in order to make it work. So let's get back to here. So we're going to use provider, Google provider. There you go. And we need to import. And actually, we need to do it over here. Sorry for that. So let me just get signing with pop-up. Let's import it. And let's do another call. And let's put it here on the top. Const Google login equal asynchronous. And it's going to be, we can actually, yeah, let's actually do the provider through here. It will be a lot better. Result would to wait to the Firebase. Actually, it's something similar, but we just need to call the signing with pop-up directly, and we will send the Firebase authorization and the provider, right? And let's call that credential, so it's going to be the same across the board. And after we have the credentials, we are waiting for that. We just need to pretty much copy and paste this. If we have credential user, we just call the authentication true and the user email. Yeah, that's pretty much what we have. User came from the result, but we just call it credentials here. But it's pretty much the result too. And that should work. What else we can use here? because I actually have a, let's call this to display name, because we know that we have a name, display name for the Google login. Let me remove the provider. We don't need this provider over here anymore. And let's actually call, send the Google login. Okay. That means that we need to import the Google login. And let's add another one. Because Google is going to be asynchronous. We're going to wait to execute the Google login, and then we're going to go to home. As simple as that. In theory, we should be able to go to my button and call it whenever I click it. We call Google. That should be it. So let's try it. If I click here, we have the pop-up. There you go. You can see my accounts that I have here. I will select mine. And welcome, Rodolfo Roman. We change the user for the URL to the display name, and I'm able to see the secret. Of course, I hope that your secret is different to this, right? But that's it. And I believe the fastest videos that we ever created over here. With that simple step, we're able to just put the Google authentication. So let's get back a little bit. We create a new button and we just stylize that button in order to show a Google image, right? And we call the Google function. That function will call the Google login and then we'll try to go to home if the authentication is true, right? That Google login, what it's going to be doing is something really simple. We just call the provider and then we call the provider through a signing with pop-up, sending the authorization and the provider itself as element. If the user exists, log in. We just change, instead of getting the email, we change to display name because we know that Google user by default, they have a profile. We are not messing up with those. And that should be it. Everything worked the way that it's supposed to. Print it. So the only thing that is pending here, and everything is saved, I do a git status. We did a couple of changes, so I will add all those changes to be staged and commit to added Google login. Only with that, I can actually go to my server. Oh, wait, before I go to my server, let me push my code to Github. So let's update the server. And I will keep it this like this because I want to go to view login.rodorman. If I click login, you can see that Google is not there, right? So we need to update the page. But the pretty cool thing is we don't need to do anything with Nginx. Everything's already set up. So I just need to go to my projects or my sites, whatever you call it. I will go to my view login. I will do a git pull from here, right? I will configure this to be Firebase true, probably is a little bit better. And let's do a pull just in case, already up to date, perfect. npm install, just to verify that install all the dependencies. Every time that you pull it, it's recommended. And then just do npm run build. Remember that we already have the source, the Firebase config here, so we don't need to do nothing about it. And Nginx is already pointing to the build folder. So that means if I refresh this, I can see my Google login. If I try it, I can select again, and I'm inside my app through Google in the deployed application. One last thing that I want to show you, if I go to Firebase and do a refresh, I can see that we have the new user there with the new provider, and it's actually working. Pretty neat, right? So I really hope that you like it, and we had over there. So what we can actually add now, just to end everything, will be change this username to actually email. Let's do that because we actually saving an email, not a username by itself. So let me go here. Let me exit my project. Let me npm run dev to run it locally. Open it again, right? There you go. Send this to the right. Put my code on the left. Whoops. My code to the left. And let's go to login when we have username as placeholder here. Let's just change the placeholder. Let's be a little bit lazy. And we have the email there. So something that I just want to add now is to validate whether that this actually needs to be an email. And I want to put a couple of rules. So whenever I click this, it will not do anything if this is not a valid email. And there's several ways to do it, but one of the best ones is to use validate, I believe it's called, validate, and have been released for Vue 3. Perfect. Let's go to version 4. It's a easy declarative validation, and it's really easy to implement. And instead of creating our own validation, I will say that it's better to be here. Remember, you need to be in version 4 because we are using Vue 3. So let's get started. Composition API, validation, let's see what we can do. The way that it works, we have a Vue model type, and we use the field. Okay, and inside my setup, I call the use require. And then use field with the file name. And is required. But this file name should be this one over here. Oh, there you go, value. There you go. Error message is through here, and value is through here. Interesting. Or we can use jup. And we set up the mesh and the value. And we say that it should be a string, require, and a specific size. And we just return the value and the message by itself. Could work something like this. Let's go to a little more advanced one because we need to validate a form. So we have the use form, the use field. We have an email. This is actually an object. Email and password. The input need to have a name. Okay. And use form validation schema. Hmm. So what I'm looking here is, to be sincere, I have time that I didn't apply a validation. So we're just looking at the documentation. I like this. With jobs, I believe it looks simpler enough. We import job and we create the object. Yes, this is pretty much what we need right here. String require email and a strong password. Should be more than enough. And we don't need to have this anymore. Oh yes, we need to have this for the error message by itself. Okay, so here we have exactly what we need. So let's go to the overview. And in overview, let's see, we need to add we validate next to our project. And I believe we need to add job, npm install job. Let's do it. Yeah, pretty much. And we say that we need pretty much to be using this one over here. So we need to import use field from validate and job by itself. So let's go to the top. Let's put it right here. And let's import those. Nice. We create a schema. And we call this email, but for us it's actually called, let's actually call it email and password. But well, it have the same B model. Let's go to our input boxes. And let's change this to be name equal username. Then reality is a password. It's an email. And let's call this name equal password. Let's put those names over there. Then we just define the schema. And the schema, we just telling that it's a string that is required and it's an email. And we can define those right here before the load notification. Let's do it right here. The first thing is going to be validation. Schema. And we do the use form. We call this is actually username. Yeah. Now we do this to email. This actually username. And we need to remove these two. We don't need it anymore. Mm. Should be more than enough. In theory, we need to call. Let me go back to the app. Let's put after the input a little span message, error. And let's make this just to be class text red 500. Oops. Let's make this text center. Let's make this text dash font. No, it's a text extra small. Um, Let me check the background, how it looked like. But I just saw background to verify what is across. Okay, that should be more than enough. So we can copy this error message from that, and let's put it after the password too. It's not the best looking error message, but it's something. And we need to send our email error where we have the username. Is nothing by default, perfect. And we need to send our password error. Oops, right here. So let's try it. So if I do something like this, that should pretty much trigger it. It didn't trigger it. Let me see how we can actually trigger the error, because this should be failing miserably. But you should be able to see that this should be something. Let me check. And I think I already found the issue. So in theory, this should be validated. There you go. That one has been validated. Need to be at least 8. When I jump to the 8 characters, it's working, but this one is not. And it's not working because here, the field we call the username. So now it must be a valid email. So when I have a email valid.com, let's call this fake password. Oops, fake, fake. There you go. And we sign up. We can actually sign in. Perfect. And we have a new one over here. So it was interesting. It's a little complex. It's not as simple as it was before, but let's just get back what we did. So we use the form and the field from vValidate and we import job. In job we create an object and you can see the job documentation, everything that you can actually be like for age, for example. You can validate that is required, that is a positive, that is an integer, stuff like that. So here we just put the username, it needs to be an email in this case, and the password needs to be minimum 8 characters. And the form we just do validation schema, the schema itself, right? Now, let me look, I believe we're missing something here. Let me look with forms. And whenever we call the form by itself, let me just verify something. Okay, into the different element, we don't need to have that. Here, when we have the form, and we can do other stuff that is not required right now. Handling form on step submission, let me check. Well, we can keep it like that for now. It's not, I will be sincere, it's not the best way, now that I imply, but we already recorded, right? We have a simple validation, and we can specify different elements here. So the use form and the use field, we create our object for validation. This one need to be created over here. We don't need to do the reference anymore. That's important because the use field we do the reference for us on top of the specific validation. That means that we can actually get rid of this. What else we can do here? When the use field is this is important to be the name of the field. So you need to match this with the name that you are using in your form for the name, right? And that's it pretty much. And we can actually have, I believe we can actually have custom message. Let's do message, no text, label. And we can do, let's call this wrong email. No, it's not doing it. And I believe I found it here. Custom errors. We can actually specify in the Jupe. Let me find it. Let me look for that. I remember seeing it. Mm, displaying error message. Okay, and there's one over here. There you go. Yeah, it should be the label. So why didn't work? Let's save this just in case. Let's refresh this just in case. Hmm. Oh, wrong email. We call it like that. So we do stuff. Stuff will be a valid email. So this is pretty much the name of the field. So that happens when we have, let's remove the label, right? And say username must be a valid field. In this case, it's not a username. We need to have label, let's call it email, must be a valid email. And password is lowercase by default because that's the name that it have. So let me just change the label to be password with uppercase. There you go. So, and that make a half an hour video, a little bit more. I will stop here. So we saw a little bit of validation. Probably we need to do something extra later, but for now, this should be more than enough. So I will stop the video now. We added the Google and we added the validation by itself. We just need to publish those. Let me just do those really quick. Git add everything, git commit added basic validation, right? And then git push. We go to the server, go to my projects, the login. I do a git pull, npm install everything just in case, and npm run build. And with that, when it finishes, let's wait for a minute. There you go. Here we refresh, and we have that validation working the way that it's supposed to. Okay, so I really hope that you like it. Sorry for the long video, but remember always, if you have any question, any doubt, don't hesitate to reach me. Happy coding, everybody.